We can do it
Awesome.
again, man.
We'll start it over. We'll dry run. We'll ask you why you're running for president. Well, we've already heard this before. All right, 3. What the fuck is up, people? We are here with Dan Behrman. He is a 2020 candidate for president, so I figure we're just going to dive right into it. Dan, why do you want to be president?
I want to clarify. I really do want to clarify to the listeners here on this podcast. We started an intro on here, and we were like 10 minutes in, and then we were like, "Oh no, we're not recording." So
we apologize if it sounds redundant, but
nah, we're fine. You guys will love it. So.
Yeah. Why do you want to be president, Dan?
I don't. Short answer. So yeah, it's, I've seen this happen so many times. We get these candidates, Democrats and Republicans, and they go at each other and they fight, and one of them wins, and nothing ever changes. We're still kind of like in the same thing, the same mess that we're in since I started paying attention, which was probably like around 2007. We've seen libertarian candidates come up, and they're usually just like kind of dry and stale. The ones who get nominated, I've seen like a lot of really awesome libertarian candidates on various levels, but for some reason it's the presidential nominee who's kind of like the poster child of libertarianism, or is supposed to be, and they're usually just so like dry. They're like the libertarians love them, but nobody else does. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring in a different perspective to that and kind of change things up. And, if nobody else is willing to do it right, then you got to do it yourself.
It's a good point. Point.
I had said it before when he originally recorded. I wanted to drive the point away too that it's a big task, because running for president is like seriously like trying to drunk drive. Like it's really tough.
Some people are better at it than others.
Yeah. But most of the time, if you're good at it, you're probably a scumbag. So.
That's a good point. I like that. That's a good one.
But with the presidential race it's tough for like everybody, man. It's just going to be such an uphill battle. And I wanted to know, like, you were planning on maybe sometime after this, or doing some kind of maybe smaller elections too, or I mean, it could even be, you were talking about before, like being like a sheriff or even something small like that, where even if there was just a lot of libertarian people running for these smaller elections and everything, that could probably be what you would need in the next like 5-10 years to really start making a huge difference, kind of like what the socialists did with the Democrats and everything.
Right. I did run for Texas House in 2014. And I think just because what I've seen and what I'm doing compared to what so many other libertarians are doing, I'm not sure if I would run myself for a smaller position, but what I'd really like to do is to really take all of the information and everything that I'm learning from this campaign and share it with all of the other candidates, because there's, it's unfortunate, but just because the Libertarian Party is so small, that, when somebody wants to run, they don't really have the guidance and resources and everything that they need. So it's really, really difficult. So I think after this, what I might do, if not continuing to run for the 2024 and forward, is to help those other local candidates, and really just kind of give them, give them some of this platform that I've been creating that's really been resonating well with Democrats and Republicans, that's actually getting people to come together and say, hey, this government thing, it's too big. Maybe if it's a little bit smaller and we stop trying to steal from the other side, then we can actually both, we can find a solution that makes everybody happy. Mm-hmm. So I think, that's the kind of thinking that I want to help other libertarian candidates get to.
Well, so Dan, you're down in Texas, right?
I'm actually down in Cancun right now. I moved down here a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So, I'm running for president of the United States from Mexico. How about that?
Are you You're not a Mexican citizen though, right?
No, I'm here. I'm on a perpetual tourist visa.
Okay. You're not going the Jesse Ventura route?
No, or the John McAfee route.
Well, John, so you didn't kill anybody. That's
well, that
good.
Too. But he's in. I guess he's kind of in exile from the IRS is chasing him or something like that over some crypto deal, but he's running his campaign from the Bahamas. So.
Well, that sounds like a good place to run a campaign from.
Yeah.
Me.
That's funny. But down in Cancun, guys, because I was wondering about being down in Texas. Texas seems like it'd be a good place to kind of try to get involved with some of the local politics. I mean, there's a lot of people that just want the government to fuck off down there in Texas. So
yeah, it's been great. So I lived in Texas for I think maybe 7 years, and I grew up in Los Angeles, but I identify as a Texan, even though I'm not living in Texas right now.
Mhm.
I met a lot of really awesome people down there, and it's true. Like a lot of them are very, very pro freedom. But I've been traveling around the country a lot too. And I've met, people all over the place that are, just very receptive to the taxation is theft message. I actually went, when I was at the Florida convention, I had to take my computer into the Apple store. And I just went in like this with the hat and suit and everything. And every single Apple employee that walked by me in Florida was like, wow, that's an awesome hat. So I was giving out these wristbands that I've got, like these promotional things.
Yeah.
That say taxation is theft. So like every employee in the Apple store in Tampa has one of these now. And it's just, depending on where you go, people are more receptive to it. And then others you go and it starts a conversation. And then you find out they're like, they might not be against taxes so much, but they're against, bombing children in Iraq and Libya and everywhere else. So they do kind of get it. And it's once you have this message that's kind of like, hey, we can all kind of get what we want if we stop fighting each other, then they're willing to kind of come together on that. So
now, is it true that you legally changed your middle name to Taxation is Theft, or is that an urban legend?
It's lawfully changed by declaration. So
nice.
So what they want you to do is they want you to fill out a petition and go to a court and ask for permission, but free men don't ask for permission. So I didn't. I declared it, and that is my middle name, and that's how I'm filed with the FEC. So if I get the nomination, that's how I'm going to appear on the ballot in all 50 states.
It's like a common law marriage or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Which I'm actually also married, and without the state, without the government. So it's just kind of like I guess you could call it a handshake deal, right? But it's there's no why do you need to ask government for permission for any of this stuff? So I've really been trying to like live outside of government and get government involved as little in my life as possible.
Yeah, then that's one thing I've noticed you mentioned that about the Libertarian candidates. I've kind of watched all the primaries from afar, and everybody seems to be so nasty with each other, but all you guys seem to be helping each other out, and I think that's kind of cool. It's almost like a team effort. There's no shit flinging.
Yeah, same team. # same team. That's what we've been doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's because I mean, somebody put like a nasty comment on one of my Facebook posts, and they were like, yeah, well, nice try, but I'm supporting Adam Kokesh, and I'm like, so who am I? what's the big deal?
I think what makes libertarians a little bit different than some of the other parties out there is that libertarians have a very, very simple philosophy on what their ethics are kind of built on, and it's just no government. So whereas you got like your typical right wing, left wing, the Democrats, Republicans, but even like Green Party guys or I can't think of some of the other parties just off the top of my head, but I know
that's really the only ones.
I mean, they have just a lot of stuff that people, aren't going to agree on. Whereas libertarians, it's literally the one thing: no government.
There's some infighting.
Yeah, there's to tell you the truth, I kind of like to say that I'm not a libertarian just because, well, for one thing, Clayton Hunt is the only real libertarian. If you've seen the onlyreallibertarian.com. Like there's always that fight, right? Like, no, you're not a real libertarian if you don't read Ayn Rand or something, which I don't even I've read very little and I just don't get it. So I'm just like, I'm not even one of those. But I don't know a single person who can walk into a libertarian convention and say, I like the platform, it's perfect 100%. There's nothing I would add and nothing I would remove. And it's like that would be in theory the only real libertarian, and that's nobody. So everybody's different, but I think at the end of the day there is some infighting, but I think there's it's kind of a fun fight. It's like one of those fights where like at the end of the day you go and grab a beer together.
Democratic Party. So
what?
It's not people getting murdered like the Democratic Party or anything like that.
Well,
at least I hope not.
Well,
I mean, I don't know. I've never been there.
They did have John McAfee run a couple years ago. That's fucked up. There's a lot of people that didn't like Bill Weld, but now he's over primarying Trump. So what was your opinion on him?
Well, so I didn't like that he endorsed Hillary Clinton, but maybe she had a hit out on him or something. Who knows? There's plenty of conspiracy theories that say that the only reason he was in the Libertarian Party was to spoil Trump from winning to help Hillary out. So I don't know if any of that's true, but he never impressed me as anything. I actually the moment I kind of declared that I was going to run was right when Gary Johnson got the nomination in 2016. And he gave his victory speech. And like, I already knew from personal experience that he wasn't a huge fan of taxation as theft and didn't really believe taxation was theft. Right. But he said it in his victory speech. And I was like, oh, you just lost me. Now you're pandering. Yeah. So it's,
No, Bill, I mean, if you listen to his rhetoric during the 2016 cycle, Bill Weld, I mean, he made it clear that he was just trying to stop Trump. All of his attacks were at Trump. If he complimented anybody, it was Hillary Clinton. And I mean, he had I remember, what was it? I want to say he was on Stephen Colbert or somebody like that. It was some late night show host, and they asked, who do you think you'll take the most votes away from? And Gary's trying to play the middle of the line like he always did. It was, we'll take from both sides. And then Bill Weld's like, well, I think we'll take the most from Trump, like just straight up said it. And I think that was kind of the dead giveaway what his motives were.
Right.
And especially now that he's primarying him. So.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the thing libertarians don't really get is that, and I was blinded to it too. I thought Gary Johnson was the guy until he made that speech. And that was kind of like the turning point for me. Mm-hmm. But they don't understand that there are plenty of people who are not libertarians that are willing to just jump in and run as libertarians and say whatever they can to get elected. We've seen candidates like that in Texas. We've seen candidates like that for president. And I'm sure there are so many more that I haven't seen that others have just because they're, in local elections. But it's something everyone really needs to look out for. And that's the wolf in sheep's clothing. You really just need to understand that anybody, even myself, as I'm trying to tell you to vote for me, could just be lying in everything that they say. Now, of course, that's one of the reasons I have this big hat that says taxation is theft on it. Because if I ever try to say, well, taxation is theft, but we're going to pass this new tax, then you can just call bullshit and say, no, you're out of there.
So that's the point of the hat.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's one of the points. And I'm trying to figure out like a good, some good contract that I can write. That's just like, here, if I want to make it easy for myself to be impeached if I ever do anything that, because that's the thing, right? We always have these politicians and they're always lying. Like, Trump said Mexico is going to pay for the wall. Is he willing to sign a contract? If I can't get Mexico to pay for the wall within 90 days, then I'm out. I'll quit. Or
Obama closing Gitmo or
right.
War
like anything, repealing Obamacare.
Keep your doctor.
Any stuff. These guys, they just lie left and right. And the impeachment process, like, I'm glad to see, someone starting an impeachment process against Trump, even though the reason for it, I don't even think is, it's like what's his name? Bill Clinton's impeachment. Like, I thought that was a totally bogus reason to impeach him, but I'm all for impeaching presidents. We should constantly be impeaching presidents so that we have this thing that like people are they feel pressured by the people. That was the whole point of the Second Amendment, so that the government would be afraid of us and they'd be held accountable just out of fear. And now it's like, oh no, you can't have guns. You can't send threatening letters. It's I don't know if you guys saw this bomb that was sent. I don't know if it was a real bomb or not, but it was like sent with a threatening letter to Congress, I guess, saying that no unconstitutional gun laws will be passed in this state. And so it's this big thing that they're looking into because they're like, oh, this is a
That was Tennessee, by the way.
all right, Tennessee.
Inside job.
That sounds like
Yeah.
something Tennessee would
So
do.
no unconstitutional law will be passed in Tennessee, and so the police, the authorities are all looking into it like, oh my God, we got to find this guy. It's a threat. And I'm sitting there thinking like, wait a minute, his threat was that you will not break the law, or else you might see some violence. And I'm like, how is that any different from what the police do to us every day? You will not break the law and be in possession of a plant, or I might shoot you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is that very different from that? Not that I'm advocating violence, but it's funny kind of how, like, it's like violence in response to breaking the law is okay as long as it's the laws that we want to enforce.
You will not sell your body for money, or rather,
Unless you put it on camera.
Yeah.
Then it's legal.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense.
And unless you're doing it on a pole or something like that.
Yeah,
but not as a prostitute. You can't do that.
Let's be honest, most of those places are running prostitution rings out of the back, but
Yeah,
that's a whole other podcast episode.
Dan, I wanted to get your opinion on kind of like some stuff that's going on right now.
Alabama.
Not necessarily Alabama, which we can talk about later, but as like a libertarian guy, I want to hear your stance on what's going on with YouTube right now, because everybody, there's been all this talk about, do we need to regulate these social media platforms? Do we need to not regulate? Do we let them do what they do? Like, what's your stance on that?
I'm actually, so I come from a tech background. I work in tech. I'm a software engineer. And I'm actually developing another decentralized internet type social media thing. Just kind of like there's Minds out there now. There's what is it, DTube? There are actually a lot of
one that everybody calls like the Nazi one.
What's that one? Grobble? No.
It's like a YouTube.
Gab.
Gab.
Yep.
It started with a G.
Which I actually want to go check that place out. I don't believe the shit flinging that they're a bunch of Nazis, but
yeah. Anyway, sorry.
It's possible they need somewhere to speak, right?
Yeah.
They do.
So yeah, I'm really interested in seeing creative alternatives to this whole thing, and I think there is something in the future that's going to be, like take the internet, right? Anybody can put up a website, and nobody can control the content on there. Now, of course, if the government really wants to get involved, they'll try and shut it down like they did with Pirate Bay or Backpage, even though Pirate Bay has been pretty resilient.
Silk Road.
Yeah. So when you get something really, really unacceptable, they might really try hard to take it down. And I'm sure, someone's going to come up with a system to prevent that from happening. But when you look at the way the internet is kind of distributed in that way, there is no central control. It's not like where YouTube, everything is on YouTube. So I don't think we should start asking for government to start growing again and start regulating to force YouTube to not censor. But I think we do need to start looking into alternatives and figuring out the best way to do that. And it might take a little bit of time, and it might be a difficult hurdle to get over, but I think we're definitely going to get there.
I think we're kind of in like a transitory period right now, because YouTube and Twitter or Facebook, they all seem like these big monopolies, and it's like kind of hard to see what to do with these guys.
I don't think there's a good fix-all solution for it, because the issue that a lot of the critics will point out is that Facebook receives a lot of government subsidy money. So if they're regulating free speech with government subsidies, is that, the government kind of by proxy regulating free speech without actually coming out and doing it?
I think with all those pages too, like if Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all these platforms are going to be making money off of U.S. government politics, like they make money off of, look at how many politicians have Twitter pages, how many times, the big networks put all the political debates and everything on YouTube. Then YouTube can't make any money off that if they're not gonna be doing what the laws of the United States are. Then they shouldn't be making money off of the United States government type stuff.
Absolutely, but at the same time, they shouldn't be receiving government money in the first place. So I think
that's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely right.
That's the original problem. But my issue with it, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, whether or not it should be regulated or like a utility or anything like that, because what I see is that we're rapidly approaching a time in our society where social media is going to be the single most important aspect of your campaign, if we're not already there. I don't want Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey to be able to decide every election by just saying we're just not even going to let these people talk.
And they both seem like just the public platform anymore. I mean, it's not like the times of old where you would just go into some public house or something like that and everybody get to yell and throw shit at each other like the, Greek times or something like that. I mean, even like, 20, 30 years ago, where a lot of political discourse was happening in newspapers or something like that.
Nobody reads that shit anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't happen anymore. So if there's one place where somebody, the little guy, can get their voice out on what's going on in politics, I mean, it's these social media places. And if one side is clearly being silenced on one of them, I mean, that's a real problem. And if they keep doing what they're doing, then, I mean, they're just going to kind of strangle themselves, I think. And honestly, I don't necessarily want to see that happen, but I mean,
yeah.
I mean, what's going to happen is kind of freaky.
Right. I mean, I think realistically, if we wanted something that was open and free, there would be, I mean, theoretically, everybody's filed with the FEC. The FEC could start some video hosting service built into there where, all of the candidates are on an equal platform. But the reality is they're not really interested in that. Of course, they have a power so that the FEC is not going to give me time to talk about how I'm going to fire everyone at the FEC. So,
Which technically they could because of First Amendment. So
they won't, though.
If it was a government thing, that's where I'm thinking. I'm like, man, does the U.S. government just need to make their own social media platform or something like that? Probably not. But I mean, if you're going to base any rules of the internet on like one thing they should do, I mean, the Constitution's a pretty damn good starting piece on it. I mean, it's got the good stuff in there to base laws and everything of what it should be off of.
People were celebrating. I remember 2 years ago or a year ago when they were celebrating that they deplatformed Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And I told everyone, because people, libertarian, moderate, right people, anything like that, they were, I'm not crazy like Alex Jones. I'm like, you don't get it, because to these people on the far left that are bullying these companies to deplatform these people, anyone right of them is Alex Jones.
Think about it. And it might,
right.
It's far left today. I mean, think about it in 10, 15 years. It could be far right trying to ban people who are trying to talk about the legalization of marijuana stuff. I mean, look at like how the 90s, 80s were. I think the tide has shifted. The left kind of has a control on the media. It has now, but look at like how the world was like maybe 30 years ago, like the 80s. I mean, the 80s was really like conservative media and everything kind of controlled a lot of the stuff. I mean, that's why you saw such harsh, like war against drug type campaigns.
Hey, man.
Everything
MTV
like
was like the only the rock the vote kind of thing. And it's interesting. Like I started looking at their stuff from, once I started paying more attention to like subliminal advertising and everything. And like when there was a video that was like an MTV, rock the vote, get out and vote thing. And I was watching like, it's your future, it's your life, it's your government, your policies and everything. And as they're like doing this, they're like flashing all these like logos on the screen. And like one of them's like a clean earth, like, oh yeah, everything's got to be green. Then there was like a gun with like a circle and a cross through it. And like all these things that were like clearly like Democrat policies. And but they were trying to like present it as they're being neutral, but then subliminally they're just like passing these images to you of like, but this is what you should vote for.
Most of the time when you see those get out the vote efforts, they mean get out and vote for Democratic candidates.
Right.
Yeah.
That's almost always what it means. Every time you see those, like we talk about this all the time, I discourage people from voting. Someone asks me when election day is, I'll tell them the wrong day on purpose. So, I mean, I think most people are too stupid to make decisions that affect the rest of us, myself included.
That's why I don't vote. So.
Right. There you go.
Yeah. I'm an unregistered voter and I practice what I preach. So
right. And that's like a big thing that I see. And part of the reason that I'm doing this is like, as much as we complain about government and like everywhere, like 99% of the country is complaining that the government sucks. But yet they get exactly what they want and they just don't realize the consequences of it. They go out there every time, they vote for more government, they get more government, and then government comes around and kicks them in the ass and they're like, that's not what I voted for. Yes, it is. It's exactly what you voted for.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really a big part of this campaign is to just kind of like wake people up to that and say like, stop asking for more, start asking for less. And once we start doing that, then, once that starts getting into the voting pool, then, I think that's going to start driving down other candidates, not just myself, and hopefully someone else will get elected that just wants small government, so I don't have to do it. But it's not just the president either. It has to be at every level. You're never going to see, one libertarian president get elected and everybody else is Democrats and Republicans, because nobody's going to say, oh yeah, I'm voting Republican except for president, I'm voting libertarian. That's not how it's going to happen.
Yeah. I've always kind of said, I think what the libertarians need to do is they need to model themselves off of what the socialists did. They invaded the Democratic Party. And so now the Democrats, it's hard to tell who's a moderate one versus who's, AOC. So
right.
I kind of,
what do you think about that?
It's not a bad idea. It's interesting because, like I said, nobody can call themselves a real libertarian. The parties they're the parties. They're vehicles ultimately for getting people into offices. And if you were to become a Republican, a rhino as a libertarian, and if you could somehow sneak into the herd and there's definitely, I see some real possibility with that. But at the same time, I don't think I think because that party is so big, one person going in there isn't going to be able to do enough damage unless there's an actual movement that's really starting to grow of people who they're not just voting for the libertarian because they want to legalize weed or some other single policy, but because they really understand, hey, less government is better. And then once you kind of get there, and once you have a growing movement of that, then I think we can start sending libertarians into the Republican Party, take advantage of their infrastructure, and then start using that to get into offices as Republicans, but making smaller government. Because even realistically, there are so many libertarians within the Libertarian Party, especially a lot of them that are running, that are they wouldn't go in and cut every government program. They wouldn't cut as many things as I'm saying to cut. Right. So arguably they're not real libertarians, but at the same time, they're more libertarian today than they were 5 or 10 years ago. So we just have to hope that people are going to continue moving down that road towards the ultimate libertarian, which of course is the A word.
And Kapistan?
Oh no. Well, I think that voice needs to be in there, especially on things like Congress or the Senate, because when you have 10% or even a small percentage of people actually in there, somebody like Ron Paul, I mean, you can't argue that Ron Paul doesn't make waves.
Right.
It's not in there anymore. But
well, when he was, you can't argue that. I mean, that was just one guy. Imagine there was 3 guys, 5 guys, 10 guys there.
Absolutely.
And you just had that voice. You had those extra voices in there when Congress was trying to vote on whether or not we should have socialized medicine. And those 10 people were in there saying, no, we shouldn't do this. No.
Right.
So
I think, at the same time, so I think his voice being there is really important to the people who watch him on C-SPAN. But I think to the people that are in those rooms, for the most part, their minds are already made up. So I can't say that he's affecting their decisions. So and because nobody watches C-SPAN, I think, most of what he did in influencing people, I think was on his campaigns and his outreach to other people. Because realistically, that's where he was getting more people. That's where he was, that's where I started to see him and hear about him. And of course that got me interested in watching some of the clips that came out of C-SPAN that ended up circulating on YouTube and Facebook. But I think that was a really important part of that. So I think, campaigning is getting the message out, whether you win or lose. This is distributing information and changing minds versus, standing in Congress and yelling at a bunch of idiots that already have their minds made up that we're idiots because we want less government.
Yeah, that was something I really kind of felt like Gary Johnson wasn't able to do very well when he was running. Well, just to get the message out there, like it was kind of disturbing, or not disturbing, but disappointing to see that, because the only message you really kind of received was the marijuana legalization.
That's his big issue. Mm-hmm. He started off really hot, and then he just shit down his leg.
I think that might have partially been a point, because the media in control of everything getting out there wanted him to shit the bed. So.
I think they really fucked up because, and I'm not saying a guy like Larry Sharp, I think could have been with the press time that Gary Johnson got, a guy like Larry Sharp could have done so much better, even though he doesn't have the resume or somebody like that. You know what I mean? Somebody who's a little bit more well-spoken. Maybe he wasn't a 2-term governor of a state. He doesn't have the resume, but he gets the message out a lot better. Because
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just agreeing with you. Larry Sharp is a much better speaker. He's the things that he says are more compelling. Like people get interested in he was on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about, what do we do about schools? And he wasn't saying, oh, we're just going to get rid of all the schools. He was saying we need to figure out some sort of transitional program so that we're, it's not such a big government thing, versus Gary Johnson, who the only thing I ever remember hearing him say besides ending the drug war was, we're socially conservative and socially liberal and fiscally conservative. And it's like, as soon as you say liberal, the conservatives hate you. And as soon as you say conservative, the liberals hate you. So you just got everybody to hate you. Great job.
Well, and he openly identified as a moderate, which in one of his campaign ads, which I think pissed a lot of his base off. They're like, we don't want a moderate.
Right.
I don't know, because I admire that Gary would say, because a lot of people grilled him, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal. He said he'd be willing to have a discussion on gun control. I'm like, that's the point of this show. I'm willing to have a discussion with anybody about anything. I think my ideas are right and theirs are wrong, and if they can prove me wrong, then so be it. So I don't really think that wanting to shut down the other side on gun control is the way to go, because that's what they try to do to us.
Yeah, maybe just having the discussion to let you guys know that
we can talk
X
to
and
them.
Y isn't going to work.
But no, I would love to talk to a gun control advocate on their show, so they can come on and I can tell them they're fucking retard. Sorry, I'm not.
I've read some studies and heard some ideas kind of be presented that kind of follow along the libertarian camp of we really don't need public schools past the 6th grade. I think that some libertarians could get on board to that, because anything after 6th grade, I mean, all the basic math, arithmetic, and everything is gone and taken care of. I mean, you're kind of filled with a lot of unnecessary stuff that you don't end up using in real.
What would you do after 6th grade?
I don't know.
Straight to the sweatshops?
Not necessarily sweatshop. I know that's the libertarian dream, but
I don't know about all that.
Just kidding. But no, maybe some move into more specialized type stuff, or I know it's kind of crazy to think that a kid could think of what they, decide more of what they want to do in their future at, 14, 13. But I mean,
Americans aren't having kids at the same rate they once were.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even close.
Mm-hmm.
Teen pregnancy, wedlock pregnancy, all that is way down. And I think, and a lot of people are freaking out about it, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. And that might not be a bad idea, that after 6th grade, you go and get a private education, or you do X and Y, because a lot of the jobs that people are worried about, who's going to take those jobs, they're going to be automated.
I mean, well, look at 6th grade. How old somebody usually about 6th grade? About
11
13?
or 12. 11 or 12.
Maybe they start them off a little bit later. Have them get done with that grade around the 12, 13, and have them start doing some specialized school or something like that. I mean,
I've been talking to a lot of homeschoolers, and they're not only is it very, very inexpensive, but it's it sounds like they're this one woman I was talking to, her kid was he was falling behind, and he couldn't write. I guess his reading and writing skills weren't that great in 3rd grade or something. Now he's above and beyond where he's supposed to be after 6 months of homeschooling, and it's and it costs she's spending less than $100 a month for everything that she needs in order to get the I almost said propaganda, the curriculum together of what she needs to teach. But it's also great that you get to pick and choose what what curriculum you want, versus just throwing them in a public school and they're getting indoctrinated for 8 hours or 6 hours, and then they come home and it's are you going to ask them to regurgitate everything that they just learned so that you can tell them whether or not it was right or wrong? Or are you just that's kind of where the parents get lazy and say, it's not their fault. That's, they're also coming home from work, and it's you can't you can't consume all of that information to be able to tell, you know, these kids like, yeah, well, this is right or this is wrong.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, then even with the public stuff too, you don't get the oversight. You don't get the like people looking over that as much. Like, look, I mean, how they changed
Common
math.
Core is fucked.
Yeah,
Math
look how
is
they changed
so
math.
fucking stupid. How the way they've changed it. They've added so many. I don't know if do you have kids?
No.
Okay, so I know people who work in education or people that have kids around the age of elementary school, and they've added like all these different methods of long division, like the hangman method, and just there's it's a multiplication or division. It's called like the lattice thing. And somebody tried to show me, they were like, just try to figure this out. 48 divided by 12. I'm like, it's 4. He goes, okay, try and figure it out this way. And I couldn't fucking get it. Like it was so many extra steps and it was so much more difficult. And that they use the argument that, we're stimulating their brains. I'm like, no, you're frustrating these kids and burning them out.
And making it more
Well,
difficult than it needs to be. Like, you can't,
it burns
you can't
them out.
teach.
They're not going to want to learn it.
Mm-hmm. Math at the base is trying to teach problem solving skills. And it's like, well, we're going to teach kids to problem solve by doing things more difficult than they need to be. I mean, that's the real government.
Well, it's like the
thing.
Pavlovian Pavlov, or no, it wasn't Pavlov. What there was it's considered one of the fucked up psychology experiments where they had this ball or a bowl of food and they had these dogs try to climb up the hill and it was like a reverse escalator and they couldn't get up and they just gave up. It's the same concept. Yeah, you can't solve a problem, just fucking give up and get frustrated.
Yeah, it's I've got a different perspective just because I'm a math nerd, but like I get it. I've seen a lot of these things and they're really frustrating and confusing, but at the same time, like I've seen some of them, not all of them, but I've seen some of them and I'm like, okay, this actually kind of makes a little bit of sense. But what I did see was I saw I was at a friend's house and her daughter came home to do her math homework. And the problem was the mother had been trained to do it the old school way that we learned. And her daughter had been trained this new way, but she didn't quite get it in class. And now her daughter's asking her mom, hey, can you help me with her homework? And her daughter's just like, Mom, you're retarded. You can't do basic multiplication. You're supposed to be like 40 years old. You're supposed to know this stuff.
I think that's actually a really, really big problem because if somebody, I mean, math is one thing, but what if how can they change English? You know what I mean? Like
they change history.
They change history. They do that. If you want to go deep into the weeds, and this is, I mean, bear with me here. What are the odds that this is by design and they're making these math problems? They changed how these math problems are so kids will learn not to trust their parents, but to trust the government authority figure, which in this case would be the teacher.
That would not surprise me at all.
That's just my theory. I have no evidence to suggest.
I mean, look, I've seen kids go to their DARE instructors and say, my parents smoke pot. And the next thing you know, their parents are getting arrested because they followed the instructions of if you see somebody smoking weed, tell someone.
Right.
That just blows my mind. And then the I heard this when I was a kid, and I heard a friend of mine who's a lawyer. His kids were just told this by DARE. If you ever get arrested, don't ask for a lawyer because it makes you look guilty.
What? Woo. Oh, so you just say some stupid shit, and then you get incriminated. Oh my goodness! Does DARE still a thing?
I think so. It's been around at least for. I mean, the last I heard of it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, they didn't do it in my school when I was younger.
They did something. It was like Just Say No or something like that. But it's really funny with the DARE programs and everything because I know they do the Just Say No to Drugs thing. Right. Because it's weird being an adult, a grown, mid-20s adult, because I went to some of our friends. His wife is a public school teacher. As soon as we get over there, she busts out the bong. I'm like, oh, so there's that. Obviously, I'm not going to name anybody, but. Yeah, I just think that was funny, and it's kind of ironic that you're going to preach a really outdated concept of don't smoke weed, and then
I mean, saying no to drugs is one thing, but I mean, you fundamentally can argue that weed isn't a drug. Like, what you got?
Definitely.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I'm all for telling kids to say no to doing meth, it's avoiding painkillers. But
Zach just said there's an international training conference for DARE.
We should show up to that.
Oh, I'm so fucking down. I'll just take some of my special gummies before. No,
I'm gonna say I'm a product of the DARE program.
Don't do meth, don't do crack, but you know those pills that they'll just prescribe you at a hospital. Yeah, do all those, man.
Which
those
is the
fine.
same thing. Oh, it's in Phoenix? I ain't going to Phoenix. It's a dry heat, man. No, I completely agree. I have no problem with telling kids. I don't even have a problem with telling kids not to do alcohol because, to be perfectly honest, alcohol will fuck you up a lot more than pot. But I don't know. So I've heard one thing, and there's one argument I always like to hear people address this one, that when people drink alcohol, they can have a couple beers and still be, I'm not drunk, but whenever people smoke pot, they're doing it with the intent to get high. I mean, what do you think about that?
No, I'm kind of a smoker myself.
Yeah.
So you know, I like to be able to function. So
Right.
you know, there's definitely that level. Also, the really great thing about it is your stash lasts a lot longer. You
So
know,
you don't just get stoned out of your mind. I don't do drugs.
No,
So I mean,
I used to. I used to smoke a lot when I was a kid, but late teens. But yeah, that's something you get over after a while because you're like, no, you kind of want to function, you kind of want to do things, but it's it's kind of like in I guess in Silicon Valley, it's big microdosing on LSD. Yeah. Which I have yet to try, but might. That's if anybody's carrying. It's it's something where like
if you guys it's him with nudge.
It's like it's something that like we hear these stories in the 70s about like people like having so much LSD they take that trip and they never come back and there's like skulls floating around and everything but now you're hearing about people who are microdosing and it's actually helping them function better and solve everything from mathematical to computational problems and like these are probably like the biggest heads in science that are doing this that are coming up with some really interesting new things just because they're doing it. And the government even did experiments on these things to see like how it would affect your brain and stimulate your mental abilities.
They've been finding that they've been able to microdose LSD to help people get over like PTSD. Yeah, really severe PTSD.
Well, there seem to be a lot of PTSD cures out there that are illegal.
Yeah.
Big shocker there. I wonder why. Huh. Well, I mean, just like with anything, literally anything, there can be too much of it. Even if you can have too much water and your bladder will explode.
Too much oxygen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like I knew somebody that did, she did LSD every single day for years. And there's like clouds on her brain. She'll never come back from it. She'll probably die in her 40s. There are people that smoke too much pot that don't function.
Yeah, I'm always been the kind of person to say pot shouldn't be illegal, but I will never tell anybody, yeah, go smoke pot, man. I'm like, no, because
depends.
Personally, like my personal take on it is like I don't have any problem with somebody eating like doing the edible kind, which that honestly seems like what a lot of people do anymore, especially the kind of people that do it very casually and don't really want to be smoking it or anything. Right. But like I hate the smell of marijuana smoke. Like when I smell somebody smoking it like in my next door apartment or something like that, I'm like, oh, this fucking guy. Like it's I don't know, I don't like the smell of it, and you could argue that disrupts other people with what they're doing.
But that doesn't really disrupt you any more than if you go out without a shower.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm against people going out and not showering too. So there's a little bit of
I actually had a nice ass cigar last night. I'm not gonna lie. But
yeah,
that's aside from the point.
So you can't. Would never say that it's just smoking pot has no negative consequences at all. You could just smoke as much pot as much you want, and you never have to worry about anything. But you shouldn't go to jail for it. For sure,
right?
Completely.
Yeah, and that's I get asked all the time, like, would you legalize heroin? And my answer is always yes. And I usually say I would never advocate that people use heroin, but I would not advocate that if somebody gets caught with, hanging out with the wrong crowd and they happen to be in possession or they happen to try it once or twice, I would never advocate that person should go to prison. Usually what's, they might be younger, they might be in their teens, a little bit older. And they've got hopefully friends and family who are going to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this and talk them out of it. If they're minors, if they're still living with their parents are going to yell at them and probably, ground them for a little while. And that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be like, oh, nope, sorry, you tried heroin while you were 14. You're going to prison and you're not getting into college and your life is going to be ruined, even though you never touch it again.
Unfortunately, though, a lot of the people that do end up on drugs like heroin or crack or meth, they don't have that support system, and that's why they end up on it. And the government's neither here nor there; they're going to do it no matter what.
I'm maybe a little bit more conservative leaning, and this isn't where this will be kind of where I won't agree with libertarians about. Was I don't know necessarily if it should be legal or not, but heroin? I mean maybe like I'm definitely open to the discussion of like why should they go to jail though? Right. If somebody's in, if somebody gets caught doing super hard narcotics, man, like, I mean, why do they got to go to jail? Maybe they can just have some kind of
stick them in rehab or
thing to go to.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, I mean, if you're to the point in your life where you are using heroin or crack, you're probably pretty fucking low. Like you've probably screwed up a lot. You don't have a job. You don't have a kid. Your wife and kids want nothing to do with you. So you're using that drug because you're at a low point.
And you're probably super depressed. Your mental health is super low.
If you take somebody and arrest them for heroin and put it on their record for the rest of their life that this guy was a heroin junkie, even if he gets out and doesn't touch another drug again, he'll never be able to get another job.
He's branded for life as a junkie. And of course, like if you're already like that's one of the things I don't even like about like Alcoholics Anonymous. Like it's if once somebody's branded as an alcoholic, I think that makes it more difficult for them to quit than for to start treating somebody like they're not an alcoholic.
Well, Alcoholics Anonymous, that's why they stay anonymous, though.
Well, true, but you go there every day and say, "And I'm an alcoholic."
That's true.
So I think there is something that it's kind of association in your head, and like there's
I think that goes to that psychological thought about it, whereas you can't fix a problem if you don't admit you have one.
I agree.
So, true.
I've had not me myself, but I've had a lot of personal close experiences to it, and I will say that it has done a lot of good for a lot of people that I know.
Absolutely.
But even then, there are people I know that are, they've gone to meetings, and then they'll go out and they'll binge drink for a month and be like, oh, I gotta go back to my meeting, and then it lasts 3 months and they're back off the wagon. So I mean, everybody's different.
I think the main point I'm trying to get is there's a difference between saying I'm trying to quit and I quit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that's kind of like that. And so, if you have that brand on your criminal record that says you are a heroin user, like that's it. Like there is no I quit. That's always there.
Right. No, I completely agree. And the problem is once he's branded as a heroin addict and no decent paying job is going to hire him, he's way more likely to go back towards rock bottom where he was before.
Right.
And what's he going to do when he's low again? He's going to start using drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
That's my take on the drug war. I'm very passionate about it. I know Nick and I don't see eye to eye.
It's kind of a good thing that we don't see eye to eye because we're open. We get into discussions about it. I love talking to libertarians about it because they actually have actual solutions to what's going on with the drug problem, or want to present those solutions. And I will agree with the libertarians that we need to treat it more of like a mental health issue, more of an emotional issue of not the drug use as necessarily the problem, the actual problem, but the root of the problem being, well, why are they using drugs?
So
what can we do to not make them use drugs, not have to just throw them in jail for it?
We spend more money on prison population than any other country by far. And a lot of that is to do with the drug war. Do you think, Dan, that it would be a better, use of resources to do mandated rehab? Or,
it would definitely cost less. It's hard to say that I would implement a program like that. I would say that, just like AA is kind of there as a nonprofit structure. I think there would be, maybe more possibilities of that, especially if, somebody could openly walk into, and I know there are programs that people could openly walk into, but, if, there's just always a problem of oh my God, somebody OD'd. Let's drop them off somewhere because we don't want to walk into the hospital with them and get caught and everybody gets arrested.
That's a big problem.
Yeah. So there's definitely there's definitely ways to figure out a voluntary solution to all of this.
And you can even make that argument in regards to drinking age laws, because if some kid gets so drunk and some kid gets alcohol poisoning that's 17 and he's at a party with older people, they're going to take him and just dump him. Or somebody that's old enough to drink, they're going to, I'm not going down for this kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing. I mean, people that have, hard drug addictions, they're afraid to get help because they're afraid that the doctors are going to call the cops on them.
Yeah, those substance abuse things, societal wise and legal wise, just they really are kind of a scarlet letter on there, and it really makes it hard to climb out of that hole that it gets dug in by it.
Well, we mentioned AA, and I know there's a lot of people out there that'll chew me up and spit me out for saying this, but hear me out on it. I think alcoholics have it easy in a sense that unless you've gotten a DUI or you've done something illegal while you were drunk, you don't have that mark on you that someone who got arrested for cocaine or an addict to meth or heroin does.
Even DUI, I mean, socially, you're like, people are gonna not be as spiteful to you as a DUI unless you maybe like killed somebody.
That's the funny thing.
Like that.
If you get arrested with crack in your own home, as compared to somebody that gets in their car impaired and very much risks killing somebody, there's going to be way more of a negative stigma toward you for doing something in the comfort and the safety of your own home than somebody who literally could have taken someone else's life.
Right. I had an interesting conversation with a sheriff who was, he stopped me for about an hour while he was trying to figure out where my car came from. But while his buddy was at? This is in Texas on one of the major drug routes. So of course they see a car without license plates and they're like, suspicious, red flag. That's another story for another day. So I'm talking to the sheriff, and he said, yeah, well, he sees all my libertarian propaganda, and he's like, well, what's your thought on the drug war? And I'm like, we should end the drug war. He says, well, what about this guy that I arrested last night? And he starts telling me about this guy that it was his third offense for breaking and entering, and he was stealing stuff so that he could go buy meth. And I was like, okay, what did you charge him with? Breaking and entering. And I'm like, so what do drugs have to do with it?
Right. Well, I mean, he was breaking in to get the drug. I see where you're going with that.
Right. But what if he had a job and he was, or let's say he was on, he was getting some sort of, inheritance or whatever, and he's just sitting on his couch all day smoking meth. Is that an issue, or is it the breaking and entering that's actually the issue?
No, I get what you're saying. Things are already like violent crimes, property crimes. If you get high on meth and you kill somebody or you break in, those are already illegal. We don't need to make them double illegal.
I think it's might be because, and I've only scratched the surface on this, but economists, they have like estimates and stuff that like how much cost on like our GDP that like drug use causes, because you get that guy that's out there just sitting on his couch doing drugs, and it's like, well, he's not out there, in the workforce, like making the world better. Or
that's not his responsibility.
Potentially making the world better.
He's not our slave. Like we can't force him to work. That's one of the things I hear all the time. Terms of your probation, you have to be gainfully employed. Yeah. What?
Right.
Why?
If maybe not necessarily out there working some fucking shitty job or something like that. I mean, maybe doing like a community outreach program, maybe even just like doing something that he wants to do that can be considered helping or as productive member of society. Like,
what is it our responsibility to make him do it? What if he just wants to sit?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
I mean, as long as he's not like, causing destruction to the other people who are doing that.
Right. Or eating up welfare, which is a whole other.
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of the argument toward that is people say, oh, they just eat up welfare. I'm like, well, your problem's with the welfare state and not the drug use.
I would wonder how common it is for to be that archetypical drug user, as most of them, from what I understand, are just fucking homeless people, and like homeless people cause all sorts of problems in a city environment. So
yes and no, because I have a friend who has battled meth addiction for a long time.
Yeah,
you wouldn't know it. So there are functioning meth heads. There's a lot of them that aren't functioning. No, there's a lot, but there are functioning meth heads.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, that's really like a lot of what we see whenever a politician gets up there and says, we're going to sell you a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. I mean, it's just like, somebody goes in and shoots up a school. Oh, we have to ban guns. Guns weren't the problem. There's a kid that had all of these issues. Maybe he was bullied, whatever the issue may be. He was on all these medications that made him, mentally unfit to be around a gun. All of these things. But one of the biggest ones that I see that nobody's talking about is why it's so difficult to just survive. Everybody says, oh, well, the rent's too high, we need welfare programs, or food's too expensive, we need higher minimum wages. the reality is like, no, we should be able to function without jobs. And I've been to places in the world where that's totally possible. The reality is when you start factoring government taxes and everything, it is no longer economically feasible for anybody to have just a small piece of land without having worked too hard for it, have pull water out of the well in the ground and grow chickens and grow some small vegetation, corn, whatever, that you can eat. Now, not to say that everybody should live like that, but it should be possible to live like that. And then what happens is government comes in and they say, first, we're going to tax the land. And if you don't have money to pay the tax, then you either need to sell some of your land or you need to work and, go out and get a job so that you can earn money just so you can pay the property tax. But then they start saying, oh, but when you work to earn that money that you're going to pay the property tax with, we're going to tax that too. And then, oh, well, you don't have time to grow your own food and manage your own farm now. You're going to have to buy food from someone else. We're going to tax that. And they just start adding all these taxes and they all compound each other. And, like I said, it shouldn't be that we should all live that very simple life. But if that very simple life isn't even possible without paying, without working as a slave just to pay the government part of it, imagine how much you're paying the government just to work hard so that you can have a better, more luxurious life than that. Yeah,
because it's insane. We get taxed more now than percentage-wise than we did when we fought why we fought the revolution.
We were stacking bodies over 3-cent taxes, right. And now, oh please, Daddy, take 50% of my income.
Yeah, even like percentage-wise, like we are, and I'm like, man, and the government is still in huge amounts of debt. Like, I really like Warren Buffett's solution about it, where he says members of like the Congress, judges and presidents, all them, they don't get paid if there's a deficit. Like
or ever.
Yeah.
That would be my solution, was they don't get paid ever.
Right, because all they have to do is, if Congress is right, it's going to be a total government shutdown unless we can balance the budget. So we're going to have to jack up the income tax to 80%.
But they still get paid. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they still get paid. And does the military get paid or no?
The only branch of the military that is considered not like
essential,
non-essential is the Coast Guard. So during government shutdowns, every other branch gets paid except the Coast Guard.
Poor Coast Guard.
Yeah, which I really like what you say about that, where you're like, well, if they're non-essential, why do we even have it? So,
right. If it's not essential, why am I paying for it?
Yeah.
And if it couldn't survive on its own, what's the point of it? If there's not a market for it, like the National Endowment for the Arts, if I wouldn't pay, if it can't survive on its own, if it couldn't survive off donations or whatever, why are we paying for it? What's the point of it? Right. It's not necessary.
And there's so much money going into art that's like voluntary.
Yeah. Right.
Like it doesn't need to be taxed.
No. Homelands. Oh, okay. Poor Coast Guard. But no, yeah, it's like this what we're doing right here, podcasting. This is art. We've received no government money for it. Mm-hmm. This is our own income.
Mm-hmm. And then you look at the idiots who are spending like $50 million on a white canvas with like one little circle of red ink or something, and it's like, hey, if you've got that money to spend, that's how museums and all these other things should be funded by, these people who are spending these billions of dollars collecting art. Mm-hmm. Let them do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like the Daniel Tosh sketch about when you go into a coffee shop and they have like the $700 piece of art from some no name. It's like, hey, where'd you get that from? Oh, I had an extra $700 burning a hole in my pocket when I was at the bathroom. All right, man. It's been like an hour. Thank you so much. Do you have anything you want to plug before we cut this loose?
Yeah, you can check out my website, Behrman2020.com. I got a lot of cool stuff on there about the platform. You can register as a volunteer or make a donation, and of course follow all my social media pages. And I just have to say, we are not government property. Say it yourself, and it feels pretty good to say that. And that's how we all need to start thinking, because government thinks we are their property.
Dope. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, make sure you check out our Redbubble, subscribe to the podcast, give us your money. Voluntarily, though.
Yeah, and it really does help, guys, especially like the YouTube, the podcast and everything. Just $2 a month, it helps. So
$2 a month.
Yep. It's like those Africa things that they're 10 cents a day.
Yeah, but this will be going to a good cause, not starving children. All right, and on that, we'll end it. Have a good night, man. Thank you.
Cheers.